Adam Sandler testifies in court on day 14 of Diddy trial. What he revealed shook the nation. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. The morning sun barely pierced through the thick glass windows of the Los Angeles courthouse, yet the energy inside the halls was electric, charged with anticipation, curiosity, and an undercurrent of dread. This was day 14 of the trial that had captivated the nation. The high-profile legal battle involving Sean Diddy Combs, one of the most powerful figures in entertainment. Cameras were stationed on every floor, reporters jostled for position, and lawyers moved like chess players plotting their next strategic moves. The stakes couldn't be higher. The charges were serious, ranging from allegations of hush-money schemes to illicit alliances that blurred the lines between celebrity, crime, and political influence. No one expected what was about to happen next. When the courtroom doors swung open to reveal Adam Sandler stepping in as a witness, a hush fell over the packed room. It wasn't just the usual murmur of surprise. This was disbelief. Sandler, Hollywood's beloved comedian, known for his goofy charm and lighthearted movies, didn't fit the image of a figure involved in dark, tangled dealings or explosive courtroom drama. Yet here he was, walking steadily to the stand, a quiet gravity about him that caught everyone off guard. The judge, a stern woman with decades of experience, called the court to order. Cameras clicked furiously as the bailiffs led Sandler to the witness box. His eyes scanned the room. No hint of a joke, no trace of the carefree persona his fans adored. He was here to tell a serious story, one that threatened to unravel much more than just a single man's reputation. The room leaned in, every ear tuned to Sandler's first words. His voice was calm, deliberate, and unwavering. "I'm here to tell the truth," he began, "because some things can't stay buried any longer." Sandler spoke of late-night meetings behind closed doors, of deals made under the radar, and alliances so secretive they defied imagination. He described a world where power was currency and silence was bought with cold, hard cash. He told the court about a network that stretched far beyond Hollywood's red carpets, reaching into the heart of Washington's corridors of power. Outside the courthouse, news vans flashed their lights, ready to capture every reaction. Social media exploded within minutes, speculation swirling like wildfire. How did Sandler come to be involved? What secrets would he expose next? For once, the usually jovial actor had become a figure of serious consequence. Back inside, tension thickened as the prosecution prepared to dig deeper. Sandler's testimony was not just another chapter in this legal saga. It was a potential game-changer. The trial that had seemed like a battle over money and reputation was suddenly morphing into an exposé of a hidden world, where the rich and famous wielded influence with devastating reach. The defense team exchanged worried glances. They knew the days ahead would be grueling. Sandler's reputation and sincerity made his words harder to dismiss. This wasn't just about denying allegations anymore. It was about containing a wildfire of truth that threatened to consume everything in its path. As the courtroom doors closed for a short recess, the murmurs continued, and whispers of a shifting tide rippled through the spectators. The calm before the storm was over. Adam Sandler had stepped onto the stage, not as a comic relief, but as a harbinger of upheaval, shaking the foundations of Hollywood and Washington alike. Adam Sandler's testimony quickly peeled back the shiny veneer of Hollywood's glittering facade, revealing a shadowy underworld few outsiders ever glimpsed. He spoke in careful, measured tones about a secret society operating within the heart of the entertainment industry, a world where power was brokered in whispers and loyalty was currency more valuable than fame or fortune. He called it the Circle, a term that sent a ripple of curiosity through the courtroom. This wasn't some fringe gossip or tabloid rumor. According to Sandler, the Circle was a tightly knit network of celebrities, producers, agents, and even influential political figures who gathered in private, exclusive spaces. Their meetings were hidden from public view, held in luxurious mansions, private clubs, and remote estates where the media's prying eyes never penetrated. Sandler described these gatherings as carefully orchestrated events designed to maintain control over Hollywood's image, and to ensure the survival of those within the inner sanctum. It wasn't just about networking, he explained. It was about control, about making sure that nothing that could harm us ever got out. The courtroom listened with rapt attention as he detailed the rules that governed the Circle. Members were bound by a strict code of silence. Anyone who dared break it risked being ostracized, blacklisted, or worse. Sandler's voice dropped slightly when he mentioned the phrase often whispered among insiders. Loose lips sink ships. The hush money Sandler talked about wasn't just about paying off a single scandal. It was a sophisticated system of influence peddling that bought loyalty and sealed mouths. He explained how payments were strategically handed out, not only to victims of potential scandals, but also to those who might threaten to expose larger truths. What shocked me the most, Sandler admitted, was how far this went. It wasn't just celebrities trying to keep their reputations clean. This was a system that protected powerful people at every level, from movie executives to politicians. If someone stepped out of line, the circle would step in. The prosecution's eyes gleamed as they listened to Sandler's revelations. Each detail chipped away at the defense's claim that these were isolated incidents of personal misconduct. Instead, Sandler painted a picture of an organized, far-reaching cabal operating like a shadow government within Hollywood's bright lights. What made the story even more compelling was Sandler's personal experience. He wasn't a distant observer. He'd been part of this society, complicit for years. He described the tension of attending those exclusive parties, knowing the rules but growing increasingly uneasy with what he saw. The fear of being swallowed by the very system he helped uphold was palpable in his voice. For the defense, Sandler's account was a nightmare come to life. They scrambled to find inconsistencies, to paint him as a disgruntled former insider motivated by revenge. But the courtroom, and the public watching from afar, sensed the gravity in his words. Outside, reporters rushed to capture every nuance. Headlines splashed across news feeds. Sandler exposes Hollywood's secret society. Inside the circle, power, money, and silence. Social media ignited with debates about who might be involved and what truths had been buried for decades. As the testimony concluded for the day, the atmosphere was thick with disbelief and unease. The glamorous world everyone admired now seemed tainted, a place where shadows lurked behind every smile and deals were struck in the dark. Adam Sandler had torn away the mask, revealing a Hollywood that few wanted to admit existed. One where fame was wielded like a weapon and silence was the highest price paid. Adam Sandler's testimony shifted gears, plunging deeper into the mechanics that kept Hollywood's secrets buried: money. Not just any money, but hush money, a vast, shadowy financial network designed to buy silence and steer narratives. Sandler's voice lowered, tinged with the weight of what he was about to reveal. This wasn't just about throwing cash at a problem, he explained. It was an entire operation, complex, layered, and calculated. He painted a picture of how the payments weren't made in obvious ways, but cleverly disguised. Charitable donations, shell corporations, offshore accounts. The money flowed like a hidden river beneath the glitz and glamour, invisible to most but crucial to those in the know. Sandler detailed how the money was strategically dispersed, sometimes in small installments, other times in massive sums, depending on the risk and the target. It was a system built to suffocate scandals before they could breathe. Victims, witnesses, anyone with damaging information received financial incentives, contracts with gag clauses, threats veiled as warnings, and in some cases, more sinister pressures. One moment stuck out. Sandler recounted a meeting where Diddy's tone had shifted from charismatic to cold steel. He told his team, "Make problems disappear." No questions asked. The courtroom held its breath. The phrase echoed like a chilling command, suggesting that the hush money was just one piece of a much darker puzzle involving intimidation and manipulation. The prosecution seized on these words, pressing Sandler for details on how far the operation extended. He spoke of insiders tasked with tracking potential leaks, lawyers who specialized in silencing dissent, and even payments made to third parties to muddy investigations. It was all about control, Sandler said. Control of the story, control of people, control of power. The defense tried to undermine Sandler's credibility, arguing that his account was exaggerated, motivated by personal grievances. But the clarity and specificity of his details made those efforts falter. His descriptions of bank records, offshore trusts, and carefully worded contracts suggested insider knowledge few could fake. Sandler also revealed how hush money wasn't always enough. In some cases, when the risk escalated, other methods were employed: orchestrated public distractions, strategic leaks to friendly media, or legal battles designed to exhaust and intimidate accusers. The courtroom heard of a sophisticated playbook, updated regularly to stay one step ahead of investigators and journalists. Behind the scenes, Diddy's empire was a fortress, constantly guarded by layers of secrecy and financial firewalls. Sandler's testimony exposed the cracks in that fortress, revealing vulnerabilities in what seemed like an impenetrable system. The public reaction was immediate and intense. News outlets splashed headlines warning of Hollywood's financial web of deceit and the hush money empire. Social media exploded with calls for transparency and reform, while conspiracy theorists speculated on the true extent of the payments. Yet, amidst the outrage, a chilling question lingered. How many stories had already been silenced, buried under piles of cash and legal jargon? Sandler's revelations were a wake-up call, pulling back the curtain on a system that prioritized image over integrity and power over truth. The trial was no longer just about Diddy. It was about the entire machine that allowed such secrecy to thrive. As the session ended, the weight of the testimony hung heavy in the air. The courtroom wasn't just a place for legal battles. It had become the battleground for exposing a hidden financial empire, one built on hush money and the relentless pursuit of control. Adam Sandler's testimony took a deeply personal turn, peeling back not just the layers of corruption, but the human cost buried beneath the glittering surface. His voice softened, weighted with emotion as he recounted the story of friendship, loyalty, and ultimately betrayal, one that haunted him long before he ever stepped into the courtroom. For years, Sandler had been a part of the inner circle, a player in the very game he now condemned. He described late nights filled with laughter and camaraderie, moments when he and Diddy were more than just colleagues. They were brothers in arms navigating the treacherous waters of fame and fortune together. But beneath that brotherhood, cracks had begun to form, widening with each secret kept and lie told. The turning point came when Sandler learned about a cover-up so egregious, it shattered the fragile trust between them. He spoke of a particular incident where a serious accusation had been swept under the rug, not by mistake, but by deliberate design. The victim was silenced, truth sacrificed on the altar of reputation. Sandler's conscience couldn't bear it. "I realized then that loyalty wasn't loyalty anymore," he said quietly. It was complicity. As he recounted this betrayal, the courtroom fell silent. The star comedian, known for his jovial roles, revealed the turmoil that had plagued him in private, the sleepless nights, the nagging guilt, and the growing fear that the system he had been a part of was more poison than protection. Sandler's decision to testify wasn't easy. He spoke of the fear of retribution, professional blacklisting, personal threats, and the potential destruction of relationships he had valued deeply. Yet, the weight of silence was heavier still. "I couldn't live with myself if I stayed quiet," he admitted. "Some truths have to be told, no matter the cost." This candid confession transformed the trial's narrative. What had been a legal proceeding about hush money and corruption suddenly became a story about human frailty and moral reckoning. Sandler was no longer just a witness. He was a whistleblower risking everything to bring light to a darkness few dared to acknowledge. The defense attorneys tried to frame his testimony as a vendetta, painting him as a disgruntled friend nursing old wounds. But Sandler's sincerity and detail spoke louder than their objections. His emotional honesty resonated with the jury and the public alike, making the scandal feel painfully real and undeniably human. Outside the courthouse, public opinion shifted. Fans who once saw Sandler solely as a comedic icon now glimpsed the complex man behind the roles, a man wrestling with loyalty, guilt, and courage. The media portrayed him as both a hero and a tragic figure, caught in a storm he helped expose. This chapter of betrayal underscored the cost of truth in a world built on appearances. It highlighted the difficult choices faced by those who dare to break ranks and confront entrenched systems of power. Sandler's story was a reminder that beneath the glitz and glamour of celebrity, real people grappled with real consequences. His courage illuminated the personal price paid when loyalty ends and justice begins. As the courtroom prepared to move forward, it was clear this testimony had struck a chord far deeper than any legal argument. It was a turning point, a human story at the heart of a scandal threatening to change Hollywood forever. Adam Sandler's testimony began to stretch far beyond the velvet ropes of Hollywood's elite, pulling the curtain back on a far more tangled web, one that reached all the way into the corridors of power in Washington, D.C. The courtroom shifted, the stakes escalating as Sandler detailed the connections between the entertainment industry and political heavyweights, revealing an uneasy alliance where influence and favors flowed freely. Sandler spoke of encounters where the boundaries between celebrity and politician blurred, often in shadowy backrooms where deals were made over fine whiskey and discreet handshakes. It wasn't just about films or music, he said. It was about power, policy, and protection. He described how influential lobbyists, lawmakers, and government officials mingled with Hollywood's elite, forming partnerships that benefited both sides. The actor painted a vivid picture of lavish dinners and exclusive retreats where key players, celebrities and politicians alike, exchanged more than pleasantries. Sandler testified that these gatherings served as a stage for political favors, legislative influence, and sometimes even cover-ups. Diddy's influence extended well beyond the studio lot, Sandler explained. He knew how to get things done in Washington. The testimony revealed a complex network of mutual benefits. Politicians enjoyed the star power and financial backing from entertainment moguls, while Hollywood gained protection and leverage in regulatory matters. Lobbyists working on behalf of Diddy's interests were described as gatekeepers, wielding power behind the scenes to shield the network from scrutiny. Sandler detailed specific instances where legislative bills favorable to entertainment interests were quietly pushed through, thanks to behind-the-scenes lobbying powered by these alliances. He spoke of conversations hinting at appointments and decisions being influenced to protect the interests of this powerful circle. The prosecution capitalized on these revelations, suggesting that the trial was no longer just about hush money or corruption. It was about exposing systemic collusion that compromised public trust and governance. The courtroom atmosphere grew heavier, the implications of Sandler's testimony striking a nerve far beyond celebrity gossip. For the defense, the stakes escalated dangerously. If Sandler's allegations about Washington connections held weight, the trial could ignite a political firestorm. They attempted to cast doubt on Sandler's credibility, suggesting his knowledge was hearsay or exaggerated. But the specificity and detail of his accounts made such attacks difficult to sustain. Outside the courthouse, political circles buzzed with concern. Staffers whispered anxiously in Capitol hallways, aware that the trial's fallout could disrupt careers and reshape alliances. The media speculated endlessly. Which politicians were involved? How deep did this collusion run? Calls for investigations into lobbying practices and celebrity influence surged. Social media exploded with headlines. Hollywood meets Capitol Hill, the untold story, when fame meets power, a web of influence. Public outrage grew, as citizens demanded accountability from leaders who seemed entwined with celebrity power brokers. Sandler's testimony underscored a sobering truth. The intersection of entertainment and politics wasn't merely cosmetic. It was a strategic, powerful nexus shaping laws and protecting secrets. The glamorous facade of Hollywood hid a sophisticated political machine with reach and resources few had imagined. As the court adjourned for the day, the ripples from Sandler's revelations were already spreading. This was no longer just a trial about a single man or scandal. It was an exposé on the fusion of fame and governance, a narrative with consequences far beyond the courtroom walls. Adam Sandler's testimony took the courtroom into a world few outside the inner circle had ever glimpsed, a hidden nightlife of opulence, power, and shadowy deals. The underground parties hosted by Sean, Diddy Combs were legendary, but Sandler painted a far darker picture beneath the glittering surface. These weren't just parties, Sandler explained, his voice steady but charged with gravity. They were carefully curated stages where power was displayed, alliances were forged, and secrets were kept locked away. The courtroom listeners leaned forward as he described these gatherings. Not the glitzy, celebrity-studded events broadcast on social media, but private, invitation-only affairs held in secret locations. Sandler spoke of sprawling mansions tucked away from prying eyes, exclusive penthouses far above city streets, and hidden clubs accessed through unmarked doors. The rooms were lavishly decorated with priceless artwork, crystal chandeliers, and velvet drapes, creating an atmosphere that was as intoxicating as it was intimidating. Music pulsed in the background, but beneath the surface was an undercurrent of tension, an understanding that these parties served a purpose beyond celebration. He described the guest lists: A-listers from Hollywood's elite, top executives, politicians, lobbyists, and business magnates. Each attendee was carefully vetted, each invitation a symbol of trust and power. If you weren't invited, you didn't belong, Sandler said. But what truly unsettled the courtroom were the stories behind the scenes. Sandler revealed how these parties were used to reward loyalty. Lavish gifts, discreet favors, and lucrative contracts changed hands behind closed doors. They were also venues for silencing dissenters. Conversations that started in hushed tones often ended with veiled threats or negotiations to keep secrets safe. One particularly chilling account involved a whistleblower who had been lured to a party with promises of reconciliation, only to find themselves cornered by intimidating figures intent on quashing their disclosures. It was clear the parties were as much about control as they were about celebration, Sandler testified. The prosecution seized on these revelations to build a narrative of systemic abuse, of how glamour masked coercion, and how power was maintained not just through money, but through fear and manipulation. They painted a picture of an exclusive club where loyalty was bought, silence was rewarded, and betrayal was punished harshly. The defense attempted to paint the parties as harmless social events, arguing that Sandler was exaggerating for dramatic effect. But his detailed descriptions, his first-hand accounts of specific events and interactions, made the denials seem hollow. Outside the courtroom, media outlets raced to uncover the identities of the attendees, the locations of the secret venues, and the full extent of the party's influence. Social media buzzed with speculation and outrage, with hashtags like #UndergroundRevealed trending within hours. Sandler's testimony laid bare the unsettling truth. Beneath Hollywood's dazzling red carpets and flashing cameras lurked a parallel world where secrets were traded like currency, and the stakes were nothing less than careers, reputations, and freedom. As the day's session closed, the atmosphere was thick with unease. The parties that once symbolized glamour and excess had been exposed as arenas of power and peril, where every smile hid a secret and every handshake could change a life. The moment Adam Sandler's testimony hit the airwaves and newsstands, it sent shockwaves that reverberated far beyond the courtroom walls. Hollywood, usually a world of glamour, scripted narratives, and carefully managed images, was suddenly thrust into a chaotic storm of suspicion, scandal, and uncertainty. And Washington, where power is wielded behind closed doors, found itself under unprecedented scrutiny. Studios scrambled to contain the fallout. Projects tied to implicated figures were put on indefinite hold, casting a pall over big-budget productions and indie films alike. Deals once considered ironclad began to unravel as investors, wary of reputational damage, pulled back. Talent agents grew cautious, knowing their clients' careers might be jeopardized by association. It was a domino effect no one had predicted. In newsrooms across the country, the story dominated headlines. Talk shows and opinion panels debated not only the facts of the case, but the larger implications for the entertainment industry. Could the scandal force Hollywood to confront its darkest corners? Would the public ever trust celebrity culture the same way again? Meanwhile, Washington's power players faced their own reckoning. Politicians with known ties to the accused scrambled to distance themselves, while others quietly launched internal reviews and damage control efforts. Congressional aides whispered nervously about potential hearings and investigations that could drag lawmakers into the fray. The trial's revelations threatened to expose a network of influence that spanned the highest offices and the most exclusive social circles. Social media exploded with speculation, outrage, and demands for accountability. Hashtags like #HollywoodExposed and #WashingtonUnderFire trended worldwide. Citizen activists called for transparency reforms and stricter lobbying regulations, while conspiracy theories flourished in the fertile ground of public distrust. Back in the courtroom, the defense made a last-ditch effort to discredit Sandler. They portrayed him as a disgruntled former insider with a grudge, questioning his motives and reliability. But Sandler's calm, detailed, and consistent testimony made such attacks seem hollow. Jurors and observers sensed the weight of his words. This wasn't a vendetta, but a courageous act of truth-telling. Legal experts weighed in, suggesting the trial could become a watershed moment. This case highlights the complex entanglement of money, fame, and politics in ways we rarely see, one analyst noted. The consequences could reshape not only the legal landscape but the cultural and political fabric of the country. For the public, the revelations brought mixed feelings. Many felt betrayed by beloved icons and leaders, while others expressed sympathy for those caught in an impossible web of loyalty and secrecy. The scandal was a stark reminder that behind the headlines and flashing cameras, the struggle for power often played out in shadows. As the trial approached its climax, the courtroom atmosphere was electric with anticipation. The truth that Adam Sandler had unveiled had already changed the conversation forever. Whatever the verdict, the ripples from this moment would continue to spread, reshaping Hollywood, Washington, and the very nature of power itself. The courtroom was silent, heavy with the weight of the moment. Adam Sandler had finished his testimony, laying bare a world of secrets, betrayals, and collusion that had shocked even the most seasoned observers. The judge's gavel echoed sharply as she called the court to order, signaling the close of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. Sandler stepped down from the witness stand, a mix of relief and apprehension in his eyes. He had risked everything, his career, his friendships, and even his personal safety, to speak the truth. But now came the hardest part, facing the consequences of his courage. The trial was far from over, and the waves his revelations had stirred were only beginning to crash on shores far beyond the courtroom. Outside, the media frenzy reached a fever pitch. Every news outlet clamored for the next scoop. Every commentator dissected the implications, and every social media feed exploded with opinions. Sandler's testimony had become a cultural watershed, forcing a reckoning in both Hollywood and Washington. What was once hidden was now illuminated in stark relief. But with exposure came backlash. Sandler received both praise and threats. Some hailed him as a hero, a beacon of integrity willing to stand against the corrupt elite. Others branded him a traitor, accusing him of betrayal and opportunism. The divide was sharp and the personal cost undeniable. For Sean "Diddy" Combs, the trial's path grew even more precarious. His empire, carefully constructed over decades, showed cracks that no amount of influence could easily repair. The defense fought tirelessly, but Sandler's testimony had shifted the narrative irreversibly. Questions swirled about what other secrets might emerge and what lives would be altered forever. Beyond the courtroom, the fallout spurred calls for reform. Lawmakers proposed new measures aimed at increasing transparency and curbing the influence of money in politics and entertainment. Activists rallied for accountability, demanding that the systems enabling such secrecy be dismantled. The trial had become a catalyst for change, a rare moment when truth forced society to confront uncomfortable realities. Yet, amidst the chaos, Sandler reflected on a deeper truth. Speaking out had been necessary, but it was only the beginning. The real challenge lay in healing the wounds left by deception and rebuilding trust in institutions long tarnished by scandal. It was a slow, difficult process, requiring more than courtroom drama. It required collective will. In the final days of the trial, as closing arguments were made and jurors prepared to deliberate, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation and uncertainty. The verdict would shape not only the fate of those on trial, but the future of an entire industry and political landscape. Adam Sandler left the courthouse with a quiet resolve. He understood that truth was a double-edged sword, powerful but perilous. His testimony had ignited a firestorm, but it also offered hope. That even in the darkest places, courage could shine through, and justice, though imperfect, could prevail. As the gavel struck one last time, signaling the end of the proceedings, the world watched closely. The trial had exposed much, but its consequences would unfold for years to come. For Sandler, for Diddy, and for the countless others entwined in the web of power, the story was far from over.